Dallas Cowboys, Las Vegas Raiders, Monday Night Football, everything you need to know in 15 minutes. If you've never been here before, welcome. My name is Max. I make these for every primetime game as well as every game on Sunday to give you a unique edge, looking at run scheme metrics, coverage data, and overall trends that relate to the scheme behind the game instead of just the numbers you see on the screen. Without further ado, let's get into this breakdown. As always, in the description are links to my socials. There's some more shorter breakdowns, player-specific breakdowns on there. Make sure you're locked in. And make sure you're subscribed on here so you don't miss any other breakdowns throughout the rest of the season. This Cowboys defense, the bottom line is they're bad pretty much everywhere statistically, but they're getting healthier. Demarion Overshown, who we'll talk about here in a second, his return, his impact cannot be overstated. Now, the time I'm recording this, sounds like he is playing. If there's anything that changes, there will always be updates pinned in the comments here. But statistically, they're giving up 4.9 running back receptions per game, 170.6 wide receiver yards per game, 6 tight end receptions per game, 140.3 rush yards per game, and 4.8 yards per carry. Those are all below average defensively. They're really struggling against running backs, receivers, and tight ends, and quarterbacks, and offensive line. Like, they're struggling, guys, defensively. But they have a defensive identity, and they stick to it. They're top 5 in zone coverage rate, and they're top 5 in cover 2. We've talked about this really since week 1. It was actually the first breakdown we did. Eagles, Cowboys on Thursday Night Football, the opener. It's the Eberflus special. Regardless of who he's playing, the type of offense he's playing, when he gets a chance to sit in a too-high shell and just keep everything in front of him, he wants to do it. Now, the performances against other top 10 cover 2 teams are worth noting for Geno Smith and these pass catchers. You can see they got 3 games against other top 10 cover 2 teams. They got the Chicago Bears. Bowers had 5 for 46. Ashton Jeanty touched the ball 20 plus times. That's both in the pass game and in the run game. A lot of times when you see 2 high safeties, you're going to be more inclined to run the ball or check to a run. Against New England, Brock Bowers, 5 catches, 103 yards in this one. Michael Mayer had 4 catches. We'll talk about him in a minute. And Jeanty touched the ball 20 times. In Kansas City, the only real thing to write home about is Trey Tucker having 5 receptions. But you go to that game, and it was a blowout. It was a blowout, and that's the bottom line, regardless of who this Raiders team plays. If you can't keep the game close, the offensive identity runs away. But even in that one, guys, Jeanty touched the ball 7 times. He had a catch. I'm looking at Jeanty through the air specifically, but these heavy cover 2 teams, Chicago, New England, they want to get Jeanty involved. That's the bottom line. They want to get Jeanty involved, but sometimes they can't get him involved, and that's the reality. So when Geno sees zone, it becomes the tight end fest. We talked about it last week with Denver. They really changed their defensive identity. They were really middle field open heavy, and that fed into Michael Mayer. But in zone specifically, Michael Mayer is only the most frequently targeted player in terms of targets per route run, not the most explosive. Brock Bowers is the most explosive, but the bottom line is you're looking for safety valves. Bowers is a good option, obviously, but Michael Mayer statistically is the guy. You're looking for explosives against zone. Michael Mayer will still get a good amount of yards per route run, but Brock Bowers is the guy. Against zone, you see some of these other zone-heavy teams we'll talk about in a second here. Geno Smith loves to feed these guys. In these other games that have featured more zone-heavy matchups, you look last week against Denver, obviously Brock Bowers only had the 1 catch. They very clearly game planned for him, but Michael Mayer outperformed his projection. You look at Tennessee, another pretty zone-heavy team, 5 catches for Michael Mayer, and Brock Bowers didn't play. These more man-heavy teams, even though Kansas City will run a good amount of cover 2, they're more man-heavy. He only had a catch. You look at some of these other teams like Washington, man-heavy. Brock Bowers at less than 40 yards. Against the zone-heavy teams, the tight ends get more involved. It's the case for a lot of teams, but especially the Las Vegas Raiders. And when you look at where Geno Smith likes to throw the ball, he's top 10 in quarterback or tight end target rate. That's the inline tight end spot. Not necessarily the slot target rate. He's below average there, but he loves to throw the ball to the tight end, the inline tight end spot. He's also above average in running back target rate, which is really important to note because this Cowboys defense is targeted both at the inline tight end spot, which we just talked about, like that's a great matchup there, and at the running back spot at a top 5 rate. It's very important to note that they're very low slot target, average out wide target, but this Dallas Cowboys defense, because they're more zone heavy, they're going to sit back in zone and kind of force you to dink and dunk down the field. We'll talk red zone defense at the end here. They're not great in the red zone either, but they're going to force you to dink and dunk, and they'll play this bend don't break. They throw a lot of checkdowns. That's what happens when you play cover 2. That's what happens when you play zone. And the Cowboys are okay with that. They're okay with living in that world defensively. Now, in terms of the run scheme stuff here, again, I talked about Ashton Jeanty, and you could see players to watch Ashton Jeanty through the air. I like him through the air much more than I do on the ground. Even though Dallas, like we talked about at the top here, is allowing 143, 140.3, rush yards per game and 4.8 yards per carry. They're solid against zone scheme runs. And the issue is the Las Vegas Raiders are good again. They're better in their zone scheme runs, but they run it much more often than they do their man gap stuff. So to me, there's no real edge for the Las Vegas Raiders here in terms of the ground game, but in the pass game, it's between the hashes, it's the tight ends, it's Michael Mayer, it's Brock Bowers, it's even Ashton Genty in the pass game, which is why I'm watching these guys specifically. On the other side of the ball, this is where we're going to get a little more in depth here. The Raiders defense, I'm going to take a sip of water because it's going to take a second, but this Raiders defense is good on the ground, but only when they can keep the game within reach. Can they do that? I am not convinced. I think Dallas is playing great football offensively. They're coming off of a bye as well. I really like what Dallas can do offensively against this cover 3 heavy Raiders team, which we'll talk about in a second. The Raiders are allowing 13.4 wide receiver receptions per game, but they're only allowing 3.81 yards per carry. They're good against the run, and you go look at some of these running back performances against the Las Vegas Raiders, guys. They stop the run. You can see there has been no 100-yard rusher this year. The season high in rush yards for anybody going against them is 84 yards, and that's when Travis Etienne touched the ball 22 times. That was an overtime game as well. They stopped the run, guys. They stopped the run. Dobbins didn't crack 80. You look back at some of these other guys. Jonathan Taylor, even though he scored 3 times, did not crack 70 yards. That's arguably the league MVP here. Jeremy McNichols had 78 for Washington, but he had a big run in that game. None of these guys are having dominant performances on the ground. Swift touched the ball 14 times, carried the ball 14 times, only 38 yards. Pacheco, 15 carries, only 57 yards. Even Rashard Smith, as that game wound down, he got 14 carries, 39 yards. Teams struggle to run the ball on the Raiders. However, that means teams pass the ball more, and the Raiders are not great against the pass. They run the most zone in the NFL. Now, when you run the most zone in the NFL and you're as balanced as the Raiders are, you're going to play a good amount of cover 2, just like the Cowboys. You're going to play a good amount of cover 4 and quarters variations, but they are a heavy cover 3 team. And Dak Prescott in this Cowboys offense has had 2 games against other top 10 cover 3 teams. It was Carolina and it was Green Bay. You go look at some of these game logs against those 2 teams, and it's very clear to see how it goes. You look at the Green Bay game, Dak Prescott, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. You look at the Carolina game, 3 touchdowns, 261 yards, and no picks. Now, don't get it twisted. Dak's been good really all throughout the year, but cover 3 allows him to take advantage of the outside matchups. We'll talk about Pickens here in a second. Take advantage of the outside matchups and check the ball down when needed. That is the most important thing for Dak Prescott when he's getting these man-heavy teams like Denver. Sometimes he's forcing it in. Washington, other times, who don't have the guys in the secondary, they're taking advantage. The bottom line, Dak Prescott loves cover 3. George Pickens also loves cover 3. Now, it's important to note that, in these games, CeeDee Lamb he didn't play, in the Green Bay or Carolina game. So it is, important to note that. But CeeDee Lamb still runs a bunch of his routes from the slot. And George Pickens is running the majority from the outside. When Lamb was out, Pickens was not the slot guy, right? The outside wide receiver production, it is not a coincidence that it was George Pickens' 2 best games of the year by far against these cover 3 teams who are just going to say, okay, whether it's match or pure zone, we got one-on-one on the outside. We're going to take advantage of it if I'm Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. We see the one-on-one outside with Pickens against Green Bay. Okay, 8 for 134 and 2 touchdowns. We see the one-on-ones on the outside against Carolina. Okay, 9 for 168 and a touchdown. Pickens, to me, is the guy against cover 3. Now, again, it is so important to note, both these games without CeeDee Lamb, him coming back will almost undoubtedly affect this whole thing. But it is 100% important to note that Pickens had these games. It's also important to note that Dak against zone sees Jake Ferguson with a more frequent target rate. He has the heaviest uptick in target percentage, and he's still tied for the most receptions against zone with George Pickens. Again, important to note, Lamb didn't play in some of those games, but him and Pickens neck and neck in terms of the targets against zone. It is a super important note to make. 7 catches against Green Bay. Only 3 against Carolina, but he still got in the end zone. He got in the end zone in both of those games against cover 3 teams. And you go look at the other zone-heavy games that he's seen. Jake Ferguson saw Chicago, who plays a lot of zone. This dude caught 13 balls, guys. Granted, they were losing and they were getting blown out, but he caught 13 balls. And Arizona, another zone-heavy team, middle field open-heavy team. We talked about that 2 weeks ago in our breakdown. He caught 5 balls. He outperformed his catches and yards projection because they played a lot of zone. And Dak Prescott likes to dunk the ball down to him in those coverages. Now, in terms of the general quarterback target rates, he's above average everywhere but running back. Like, he doesn't throw the ball to the running back position. I don't know how else to say it. He doesn't really do it. That's the bottom line. But in the 2 games against those heavy cover 3 teams, it was the highest running back target rate stretch, which makes it really, really confusing. He kept it out wide or he checked the ball down. It's exactly what I just talked about without showing you the numbers and stats that back it up. Against cover 3, you look at your matchups on the outside, you take advantage. And if I have George Pickens, I'm throwing there most of the time too. But if you don't see it for whatever reason, you're like, okay, I don't like this high, low. Here you go, Javonte. That's how it goes a lot of time against cover 3 teams. He keeps it out wide or he checks it down. And again, it's so important to note, I can't stress this enough, these games were without CeeDee Lamb. So things are absolutely subject to change here. But it's not a coincidence in terms of where he threw the football that's what it was. And Lamb, when he's back, is not running as many routes from the outside compared to Pickens. So it makes sense when you're closing the middle of the field. You keep it on the outside. I expect Dak to do the same. In terms of defensive target rates, it makes us even more confident. Very low inline target rate, above average slot and running back target rate, but Raiders targeted top 10 on the outside. They don't have the dudes on the outside, in my opinion, to keep up with Pickens. And even Lamb if he's out there. In terms of the run scheme metrics, like Dallas is top 5 in man gap efficiency, but Vegas is better in man gap compared to zone. They're a little worse in zone compared to man gap. There's no edge here. There's no ground game edge here that I can see. Players to watch: Pickens, Ferguson, Dak Prescott. The red zone edge is really interesting. Dallas is way better in the red zone offensively, right? They're scoring on 61.76% of their trips into the red zone, basically every 6 tries, whereas Vegas is only scoring 47.83. So that's a pretty big margin. But defensively, guys, I mean, no matter how you slice it, go ahead. Dallas at 29 here. Teams are scoring touchdowns 7 of 10 tries when they get in the red zone, And Las Vegas, where are they at? We just saw them. There we go. Middle of the pack. Teams are scoring 6 of every 10 tries they get in the red zone. So nobody's shutting the door between these two defenses really in any sense, except on the ground for the Raiders. But to me, Dallas is probably a little bit better in the red zone because they can convert. I think they have more offensive weapons. In terms of line of scrimmage edge, the Raiders absolutely have it on the ground defensively. I don't know if they do offensively. And when you look at team sacks per game, the bottom line is here, like, these guys really aren't getting after the quarterback. Like, Vegas is averaging 2 sacks a game, Dallas averaging 2.2. But Dallas is protecting Dak a little bit better. Again, Dallas only allowing 1.7 sacks per game, where Vegas is allowing 3. And now Dallas gets Marion Overshown back. I think that's going to help them tremendously. And to be honest with you, I think Dallas takes this game. I do think it's a moderately good game, a close game, but I'm not picking against Dak against this type of defense. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. God bless.